The moon hung low over Perdition Valley, swollen and red like an omen. Dust rose in thin ghosts from the hooves of horses tethered outside the saloon, where laughter spilled into the night like spilled whiskey. The air smelled of sweat, tobacco, and bad decisions. Inside, men leaned over cracked tables, their eyes reflecting lantern light and greed. Cards slapped, coins clinked, and beneath it all a silence waited, the kind that comes before sin has a name. Levi McCall stood by the door, hat in hand, watching the world that had long stopped belonging to him. Once he had owned 200 head of cattle, a wife named May, and a future. But the drought came, then fever, and finally the bank. Now all he owned was a weary horse, a rusted colt, and a hunger he couldn't name. He hadn't come for company, he came for whiskey, the kind that burns long enough to make a man forget what he's lost. The barkeep, a one-eyed man called Pike, slammed a bottle on the counter. "You late, McCall. The show's already started." Levi frowned. "Show?" The crowd parted like waves before a storm. 3 women stood on a small wooden platform by the piano, their wrists tied in front, their eyes downcast. One wore a torn blue dress that had once known silk. Another's hair was cropped short, her lips split. The third was barely a woman, a girl maybe, 16, trembling as the barkeep shouted over the noise. "3 brides, gentlemen, each pure enough to please your God, desperate enough to serve your table." Laughter. Coins tossed. A voice from the back. "What's the starting bid?" Levi's stomach twisted. This wasn't rare in towns like Perdition. A drought could turn any soul into currency. But something about the scene cracked the shell he had built around his heart. Maybe it was the way the girl in blue met his gaze. Not pleading, not crying, just staring like she'd seen him before. Pike's voice rose again. "First bride, Anna. Strong arms, good for field work." A man in a black vest raised his hand. $10. "15, shouted another. Levi turned away, but the sound of that voice, desperate and hollow, pulled him back. The second woman's lip trembled as Pike grabbed her arm. "Lydia," he barked, "knows how to keep quiet." Levi took a step forward. "What's this?" Pike smirked. "Old law, McCall. Sheriff's dead and debts need pan. Town's got mouths to feed." Levi's eyes moved to the youngest. Her dress hung in shreds, eyes glassy as desert heat. "And her?" "Orphan," Pike said flatly. "Name's Ruth. Church couldn't keep her." The crowd chuckled. Someone called out, "She's worth more than my mule." Levi's hand tightened on the counter. His heart beat in his throat. He could walk away, should have walked away, but somewhere between the whiskey and the ghost of May's voice whispering in his head, something broke. "How much for all 3? The room went silent. Pike blinked. "All 3? Levi nodded slowly. "You heard me." The man in the black vest spat tobacco. "You trying to start a harem, rancher?" Laughter again, sharp as spurs. Levi didn't answer. He just reached into his coat and threw a pouch of coins onto the counter. "Gold. Enough?" Pike's eyes widened. "More than enough." Levi stepped forward, his voice calm but hard, then cut the ropes. For a long moment nobody moved. The piano stopped, the lantern flickered, then Pike shrugged and sliced through the bindings. The women didn't thank him, didn't cry, they just stood there, free but uncertain, as if the air for turn against them again. Levi turned to them. "You're coming with me," he said quietly. "Why?" Anna frowned. He hesitated. "Because no one else will let you live." The crowd muttered, some angry, some amused. As Levi guided the women toward the door,
Pike called after him, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You can't save the whole damn world, McCall." Levi paused at the threshold, the desert wind brushing his face. "Ain't trying to," he said, "just 3 souls tonight." Outside, the stars burned cold and cruel. The 4 of them mounted up, and the sound of hooves faded into the darkness, toward a ranch the land itself had tried to forget.
By the time they reached the edge of Perdition Valley, dawn had begun to crawl out of the horizon, slow, reluctant, and pale, as if afraid to touch the land. The desert was cold, and the night wind carried the bitter scent of mesquite smoke and forgotten graves. Levi rode ahead, hat low, eyes fixed on the distant outline of his ranch. The women followed in silence, the sound of the horses' hooves soft against the cracked earth. For a long while no one spoke. Only the wind dared whisper between them, brushing through the scrub like an unseen spirit. Levi's thoughts wandered, back to May, to the grave he'd built with his bare hands, and the promise he'd whispered when her breath had gone cold. "I'll make it right somehow." He never knew what right meant, only that it had gnawed at him ever since. Anna was the first to break the silence. Her voice was rough, shaped by dust and defiance. "You ain't said why you did it." He didn't look back. "Would it matter if I did? Maybe, maybe not. But I reckon a man doesn't buy 3 women in a saloon for charity." I sighed. "You're right. I did it because I couldn't stand watching it." "That's pity," she said flatly. "Pity don't last long in the desert." Levi's horse snorted, as if agreeing. "Neither does kindness. But I ain't losing another soul to this place, not if I can help it." The youngest, Ruth, spoke next, her voice soft and trembling. "You really gonna keep us?" Levi slowed his horse, glancing back at her. "Keep ain't the word. You'll stay till you find your feet. After that, the world's yours." Ruth nodded, though her eyes stayed on the horizon, lost in a kind of fear that no man could name. Lydia said nothing, just kept riding with her shoulders hunched, eyes darting at every sound as if ghosts followed her shadow. By the time they reached McCall Ranch, the sun had fully risen, though it brought little warmth. What had once been green pasture was now a wasteland of brittle grass and dying fences. The house stood crooked against the sky, its windows clouded, the paint long surrendered to dust. The barn leaned sideways, door creaking in the wind like an old man's breath. Levi dismounted first. "Ain't much," he muttered, "but it's shelter." Anna scanned the land, jaw tight. "You live here alone?" "Since last winter." "What happened?" she asked, though she already knew. Levi didn't answer. He simply looked toward a lone oak tree on the hill, where a small wooden cross leaned beneath it. Weathered, silent, unmarked. The women followed his gaze, and the truth spoke for itself. Inside the house, dust lay thick, his memory. Levi lit a lamp, revealing the bare bones of a life once lived. A broken rocking chair, a table missing a leg, and a painting half faded by sun. He motioned toward the small room by the stairs. "You can sleep there. I'll take the barn." Anna frowned. "You're the one who paid for us. Ain't right for you to sleep outside." Levi turned, his eyes cold but tired. "I didn't buy you to own you. I bought you so no one else would." Silence again. Lydia moved to the corner, running her fingers over the cracked wood. "You sure this place ain't cursed?" Levi almost smiled. "If it is, I reckon I'm already part of it." The wind moaned through the broken window pane. The house seemed to breathe, slow, heavy, burdened. As the women settled in, Levi stepped outside, staring across the empty fields. The sky was turning that deep orange that only existed in places where hope and hell met halfway. He pulled the flask from his coat and took a slow sip. His reflection in the whiskey shimmered like a ghost. May, I don't know what I'm doing, but maybe you do. Behind him, Anna appeared at the doorway, arms folded. You talk to ghosts, rancher? He didn't turn. Sometimes they're the only ones who listen. Anna nodded, her eyes softer now. Then maybe you ain't as lost as you think. The wind rose, carrying the sound of distant coyotes. Levi looked out into the horizon, where dust and sky met in an endless duel. Somewhere out there danger waited. Bandits, debt collectors, or worse. But for the first time in a long while, he felt something close to purpose. The sun sank lower, setting fire to the valley. And in that burning light, the house behind him, the ranch that remembered ghosts, seemed almost alive again.
The next morning broke with a stillness that felt unnatural, too quiet, too heavy, as though the land itself was holding its breath. The McCall ranch sat wrapped in mist, the kind that drifted low and silver, hiding the scars of drought beneath a thin veil. The chickens were long gone, the well near dry, and the corral empty save for ghosts of horses that once ran wild through the valley. Levi woke before the light. He always did. It was habit more than discipline, a soldier's rhythm left over from a war no one bothered to remember. The smell of coffee drifted faintly from the kitchen. When he stepped inside, he found Anna by the stove, sleeves rolled up, stirring a pot with the confidence of someone who had survived worse kitchens. "You sleep?" Levi asked quietly. Anna didn't look up. "Some. Roof leaks in the corner, but it's dry enough." He nodded, glancing toward the other two. Lydia sat by the table, her hands folded, staring at the flame with that haunted stillness of someone who'd learned not to trust mornings. Ruth was outside, hanging laundry that hadn't been washed yet, just wet cloths she'd dunked in the trough to look busy. Levi poured himself a cup, the bitter scent cutting through the silence. "You don't have to work." Anna's shoulders stiffened. "Then what? Sit around and wait to be grateful? You saved us from the saloon, not from living." Levi took a sip. "Fair enough." For a moment, the only sound was the crackle of firewood. The house creaked as it settled, and somewhere upstairs a shutter banged softly against the wind. Anna's voice dropped low. "Who's buried under that oak?" Levi didn't answer first. His eyes drifted toward the window, where the hill stood outlined in the pale dawn. "My wife, May," he said finally. Anna's stirring slowed. "She die in the drought?" "Fever took her. Same winter the baby did." The spoon in Anna's hand stopped moving. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Levi set the cup down. "Don't be. She was kinder than this land deserved. Some days I think she still walks through the house. At night, I hear her footsteps, creak in the floorboards she polished with her own hands." Lydia's eyes flickered up, her face pale. "You think it's her ghost?" Levi shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe it's just what's left of her memory. Some things don't stay buried." Outside, the sun finally broke through the mist, spilling gold light across the dry grass. Ruth's small voice carried from the yard. "Mr. McCall, there's something in the well." Levi strode out, boots crunching on gravel. The well stood crooked near the barn, half covered by a plank of warped wood. Ruth pointed down, her hands trembling. "It's moving." Levi leaned over the edge, peering into the shadow. For a heartbeat, he saw nothing, just black water reflecting the sky. Then a shape shifted below, slow and silent. He reached for his revolver. "Step back." Anna appeared behind him, breath shallow. "What is it?" "I don't know yet." He lowered the bucket rope, pulled it up halfway, and froze. Tangled inside was a burlap sack, heavy and wet. The smell hit first, iron and rot. Lydia gagged, turning away. Levi sliced it open with his knife. Inside were bones. Not animal, not fresh. Small bones, fragile, human.
Ruth let out a cry and stumbled backward. Anna's face went white as paper. Levi stared at the sack for a long, hollow moment, the wind whispering around him. "Dear God," Anna whispered, "what is this place?" Levi's jaw clenched. He tied the sack shut again and tossed it onto the dirt. Something the land wanted to forget. But the land don't forget easy. They buried the bones by the oak, a few feet from May's grave. Levi didn't speak a prayer, just stood there, hat in hand, as the dust settled over the mound. Ruth cried softly beside him, her tears darkening the soil. When it was done, Anna turned to Levi. "You sure you didn't buy more than you bargained for?" Levi met her gaze, eyes hollow but steady. "I reckon I bought a piece of my own damnation." The wind rose then, whistling through the dry grass, carrying the faint sound of a woman's laughter, soft, distant, and gone before anyone could swear it was real.
That night, the wind didn't rest. It prowled around the ranch like a starving wolf, rattling shutters, moaning through cracks, stirring the ghosts Levi swore he didn't believe in. The women slept close to the hearth, wrapped in old quilts, though none of them truly slept. Even Ruth, who'd cried herself into silence, kept waking to the sound of creaking boards above their heads, footsteps too light to belong to Levi, too steady to be the house settling. Levi sat alone on the porch, pipe smoke curling around him, eyes fixed on the dark horizon. His dog, a half-blind shepherd, lay at his feet, ears twitching at every sound that didn't belong. Out there, somewhere beyond the mesquite line, coyotes called to each other. Or maybe it was something else. The frontier had a way of making even the wind sound alive. He thought about the bones from the well. Small bones, child-sized. He'd seen enough graves to know that the ground doesn't lie, even if men do. But whose were they? He never had a child buried here, not that he knew of. May's baby had been stillborn, wrapped and buried before dawn, with no coffin, just the earth and a whisper. He remembered that day too well, the dirt under his nails, the cold in his chest that never quite left. Behind him, the door creaked open. Anna stepped onto the porch, her shawl drawn tight. "You don't sleep much, do you?" Levi didn't look up. Sleep's for men with peace on their conscience. She leaned against the post, watching him. "You think those bones were hers, the baby?" Levi drew slow on his pipe. "Don't reckon so. Too small. May buried ours deep, by the creek before it dried up. I marked it myself." Anna nodded, her eyes glinting in the dim light. "Then whoever that was, they were hidden." The two stood in silence. The wind shifted, carrying a faint smell of lilac, May's perfume, long gone, long buried. Levi stiffened. Anna caught it too. "You smell that?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Yeah." The dog lifted its head, growling low in its throat. From inside the house came the soft, rhythmic creak of a rocking chair. Levi rose, his boots heavy against the wood. "Stay here," he said, though Anna followed anyway. The door swung open with a tired groan. The fire in the hearth had burned low, casting long shadows up the walls, and there in the far corner, the old rocking chair moved, slow, steady, as if someone unseen still sat in it. The air grew cold enough to mist their breath.
Ruth whimpered from her blanket. "Mr. McCall?" Levi's voice was low. Ain't nothing to fear, girl. Anna's whisper trembled. You sure about that? The chair creaked once more and then stopped dead still. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Levi stepped forward, hand hovering near his gun, even though no bullet could stop what he felt watching him. The air seemed to throb, heavy with sorrow. Then came a whisper, faint, feminine, close as breath. You shouldn't have brought them here. Anna gasped. Ruth sat bolt upright. Lydia crossed herself and muttered something in Spanish under her breath. Levi froze, his blood turning to ice. He'd know that voice anywhere. May. He swallowed hard, forcing his jaw steady. May? That you? No answer, just the sound of the wind slamming a door upstairs. Levi turned toward the stairwell. The shadows moved strange there, stretching against the walls like black ropes. He took one step, then another. Each board groaned beneath his weight. When he reached the landing, the temperature dropped again, breath puffing white in front of him. The door to the bedroom, their bedroom, stood open. Inside, the moonlight cut across the bed. On the pillow lay something small, a wedding ring, tarnished and dusted with time. Levi picked it up slowly. It was May's. He'd buried her with it. Anna's voice came softly from behind him. What kind of house is this, Levi? He turned, eyes hollow. One that remembers. Downstairs the wind died all at once, and the silence pressed in, thick and final. Levi closed his hand around the ring. Somewhere deep in the walls the house creaked again, almost like it was breathing. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of the desert. Come morning, he said, we start fixin' this place. A ranch that remembers ghosts still deserves the chance to live again. But as he said it, he couldn't shake the feeling that the house had already made its own choice, and that whatever slept beneath its floorboards was only just waking up. By the next sunrise, the McCall ranch stirred like a wounded animal learning to walk again. The ghosts hadn't gone, but the living had grown used to their company. The women worked the yard with sleeves rolled high, dragging broken boards from the barn, mending fences with rope and stubbornness. Levi watched from the porch, hat shadowing his eyes, cigarette burning low. The land was dry as an old man's tongue, but for the first time in years it felt alive with noise, hammering, laughter that didn't last long, the creak of wood becoming something new instead of something dying. Anna was the one who gave orders now, sharp and quick like she'd been running things all her life. Lydia stayed quiet, tending to the garden that barely grew, humming songs from somewhere far south. Ruth followed her like a shadow, asking questions about seeds and saints and how to tell when a storm was coming. Levi fixed the corral fence himself. The sun baked his neck, sweat stinging his eyes, but the ache in his hands felt like purpose. Every nail he drove was another ghost buried, another sin he dared to forget. He didn't speak much that morning. The words felt heavy, but when Ruth brought him a tin cup of water, he nodded his thanks like it was gold. You think this land would ever grow again? She asked. Levi looked over the parched hills where cactus leaned like tired men. Everything grows again. It just decides what kind of life it wants first. The girl smiled, a small thing, rare and honest. For a moment it almost felt like hope could live there. But by noon, the world reminded them where they were. A dust cloud rose along the main road, thin at first, then thick as smoke.
Anna spotted it first, hand shielding her eyes. She said, "Riders." Levi turned, his gut tightening. He could tell by the way they moved, slow but certain, like men who didn't ride for company. There were 4 of them, black hats, long coats, rifles strapped to their saddles. Their horses gleamed with sweat and greed. Anna's voice dropped. "You expecting company?" Levi spit into the dirt. "Not the kind that knocks." The riders came up the trail, dust swirling around them like a storm with faces. The lead man was tall, sharp-jawed, with a scar that cut from cheek to chin. He dismounted without a word and grinned, the kind of grin that never reached the eyes. "Well, I'll be damned. Levi McCall, alive and rotten. Folks said the fever took you." Levi didn't flinch. "They say a lot of things, most of 'em lies."
The man laughed, low and cold. "Still got that bite? You owe me, McCall." Anna stepped closer, her voice calm but fierce. "Who are you?" The man tipped his hat. "Name's Silas Dodd, rancher, collector of debts. Used to be Levi's partner before he left me dry on a herd deal." Levi's jaw clenched. "You cheated the weigh-in, Silas, you know it." Silas shrugged. "Truth's just a matter of who's left to tell it." He glanced toward the women. "You got yourself a fine house again. Heard in town you bought 3 brides. Thought you'd given up on love after May." Levi's hand drifted to his revolver. "You best choose your next words real careful." Silas chuckled. "Relax, Levi. I'm just here for business. You owe me $500 from that deal, plus interest." "I don't owe you a damn thing." Silas stepped closer, boots sinking in the dry earth. "Then maybe I'll take payment another way." His eyes slid toward Ruth. The silence that followed was sharp as a drawn blade. Anna moved before Levi did, placing herself between the man and the girl. "Touch her," she said, "and I'll show you how fast a woman can shoot." Silas laughed again, louder this time, but there was a flicker of unease in his grin. "You got yourself a fiery one, Levi. Shame to waste her on a dead ranch." Levi's voice came low, calm as a church bell before a funeral. "You ride off now, Levi, and we both forget this visit. Stay, and I'll bury you under the same dirt you're threatening me over." The 2 men stared each other down, dust swirling between them like gun smoke waiting to happen. Then Silas spit in the dirt, swung onto his horse, and smiled thin as a knife. "I ain't seen the last of me. Ain't no man ever kept what's mine." The riders turned and disappeared into the valley. Levi stood there long after they were gone, staring at the horizon like it owed him an answer. Anna broke the silence first. "Who is he really?" Levi's voice came rough, the kind of man the desert breeds when the devil runs short on souls. Anna nodded slowly. "Then we best be ready for when he comes back." Levi looked at her, something unreadable in his eyes. "He will, and when he does, this ranch won't just remember ghosts, it'll make new ones."
The evening came heavy and slow, the kind that draped itself over the land like wet canvas. The sun bled into the ridge until the sky turned copper and the world seemed to hold its breath. Levi sat on the porch steps, boots planted firm in the dust, rifle across his knees. He'd cleaned it twice since Silas left, though it didn't need it. Sometimes a man just needed something to do with his hands when his thoughts were too sharp to touch. Inside, the sound of quiet voices leaked through the cracks in the wood. The women spoke low, cautious, like they were afraid to stir the ghost Silas had woken. Anna was sharpening a knife, her movements steady and precise. Lydia prayed over a small candle that flickered as if uncertain it wanted to live. Ruth sat near the window, knees pulled to her chest, watching Levi through the glass like a child watching a storm she didn't yet understand. Anna broke the silence first. "He'll come back," she said. "Men like him always do. They can't stand the thought of losing." Lydia nodded, her eyes on the flame. "Then we'll pray he comes with mercy." Anna scoffed softly. "Mercy don't live out here, sweetheart." When Levi finally came in, the smell of dust and tobacco clung to him. He hung his hat by the door, his voice low. "You all best rest. Tomorrow we start moving the herd closer to the ridge. If he's coming, I want clear sight of every direction." Anna looked up from the table. "You think he'll bring men?" Levi's eyes flickered like flint. "He'll bring death. Whether he aims it at us or just rides with it, I can't say yet." No one slept much that night. The coyotes howled in the distance, their cries echoing across the valley like a warning carried on the wind. Every sound, the creak of a board, the flap of a shutter, felt like footsteps in the dark. Before dawn, Levi was already saddled. He rode out alone to the ridge, surveying the open plains that stretched far as a man could dream. The world was quiet, too quiet, and that silence told him more than noise ever could. He thought of Silas Dodd, of the old cattle days when they'd ridden side by side under the same dust, splitting profits and whiskey until greed soured the friendship. Silas had been the kind of man who could smile while robbing you blind. Levi should have shot him years ago, but mercy had a way of being expensive. He was still thinking when he spotted smoke. Thin, black, deliberate, not from a cooking fire, but from a signal, 3 miles east, just beyond the ridge. When he rode back to the ranch, the women were already outside, faces drawn. Anna was the first. That was the kind of promise men made when they knew they might not live long enough to keep it. By midday, they heard the hooves again, steady, cruel, confident. Silas had returned, and this time he wasn't alone. 6 riders, guns at their hips, greed in their eyes. They came fast, dust boiling behind them. Levi stepped into the yard with his rifle leveled, Anna beside him, shotgun cocked. Lydia stood behind him, clutching a rosary tight enough to break it. Ruth watched from the doorway, pale as bone. Silas reined in his horse, boots hitting the dirt. "You could have made this easy, Levi. You could have handed over what's mine." Levi's voice was a slow burn. "Ain't nothing on this land that belongs to you." Silas smiled, a snake smile. "Then I'll take it the hard way." He drew first. The crack of gunfire split the air, echoing off the canyon walls. One rider fell, then another. Dust exploded into chaos, and a shotgun roared, scattering the men like crows. Levi dropped to one knee, firing clean and calm, every shot an old prayer answered. But Silas didn't fall. He moved through the smoke like a ghost, his revolver flashing in the dim. A bullet tore through Levi's shoulder, spinning him back, blood painting the dust red. Anna screamed his name, firing again, striking one man square in the chest. Then silence, except for the hiss of the dying wind. When the dust settled, 4 men lay dead. 2 fled into the hills. Silas stood at the edge of the yard, hat gone, face bleeding, gun empty. He stared at Levi, something like respect flickering behind the hate. "This ain't over," he rasped. "Not till one of us feeds the worms." He turned his horse and rode off into the dying sun. Levi pressed his hand to his wound, breathing hard. Anna knelt beside him, hand shaking but steady where it mattered. "You gonna live," she said. He looked at her, eyes dark with something deeper than pain. "Maybe,
but the West don't let a man live without a price. And as the sun dropped below the ridge, painting the ranch in blood and gold, Levi McCall finally understood. Debt wasn't just money owed, it was everything a man ever loved that the desert could still take away.
Night came crawling over the plains like a wounded beast, slow and bleeding light. The moon hung heavy, swollen, yellow, and watchful, casting the McCall ranch in silver scars and long, uneasy shadows. The smell of gunpowder still clung to the air, mixed with blood and the bitter tang of fear. The wind whispered through the broken corral like it was reciting last rites for the fallen. Levi sat on the porch again, one arm in a sling, shirt torn and crusted dark with dried blood. The pain was deep, but he didn't flinch. Pain was an old friend, the kind that didn't need to be spoken to, just shared a drink with and silence. Anna sat nearby, cleaning her shotgun for the fourth time, jaw tight. Ruth was inside, trying to help Lydia bandage the wound, though Lydia's hands trembled too much to tie a knot. They'd buried the dead men before sundown. No prayers, no markers, just dust over dust. Levi hadn't wanted to leave 'em for the vultures. Even bastards deserved a patch of earth, he'd said. It was the sort of mercy that made Anna's throat tighten with something between respect and disbelief. When the night grew colder, Levi finally spoke. He'll be back. Not tonight, maybe not this week, but he'll come. Silas don't quit easy. Anna didn't look up. Then neither will we. Levi gave a small nod. The firelight flickered across his face, etching the weariness deep. He said, "You shoot as straight as any man I've known." She replied low, "I had to. World didn't give me the kind of life that let me miss." Levi almost smiled. Almost. Ain't that the truth? A silence settled, thick as dusk. Out beyond the ridge, a wolf howled, long, mournful, the kind of sound that makes even the stars seem lonely. Ruth peeked through the doorway, her eyes wide. "Mr. McCall, what if he brings more next time?" Levi turned his gaze toward her, voice slow and steady. "Then we make the ground remember us." The words sank deep into the bones of that night. Later, when the fire burned low, Lydia stepped out to sit beside Levi. Her hands were folded, her face soft beneath the moonlight. She said, "I prayed for peace, but it feels like God's forgotten this land." Levi stared at the horizon, where the moonlight kissed the hills. He said, "Maybe he hasn't. Maybe he's just letting us fight for what's left of it."
Lydia's eyes glistened. "You still believe there's something worth saving?" Levi's breath came slow. "If I didn't, I'd have stayed in that saloon and let 'em auction off their souls." For a while, they said nothing more, just the crackle of the fire, the hum of crickets, and the low groan of the wind moving through the valley like an old spirit trying to find its home again. But deep down, Levi knew this peace was a lie. The land itself could feel it, the tension buried in the soil, waiting to bloom again in gunfire and blood. Men like Silas didn't leave things unfinished, and the desert never forgot a debt. Near midnight, Anna came out again, holding her shawl close. She looked up at the moon, pale and watchful, then down at Levi. "You think he'll come tonight?" Levi's eyes stayed on the ridge. "He might, but the moon's full. Good light for dying, bad light for sneaking. If he's smart, he'll wait." Anna nodded slowly, then sat beside him, their silence heavier than any words could carry. The night stretched on, the fire dimmed, the world seemed to shrink until it was just them, 4 souls clinging to a dying patch of land, bound by blood, debt, and the fragile thread of something that might have been hope. Then, somewhere far off, a sound split the quiet. Faint, but unmistakable. Hooves. Slow. Steady. Coming closer. Levi rose, wincing as his shoulder burned, hand finding his rifle. Anna followed, shotgun ready, eyes narrowed to slits. Lydia and Ruth moved to the door, breath caught in their throats. The sound grew louder. 1 horse. Not 6. 1. And when the rider came into view beneath the silver moon, Levi's heart froze, like the land itself had stopped breathing. It wasn't Silas. It was a woman.
The horse came out of the darkness slow, hooves sinking deep in the dust. The rider sat tall, a dark cloak rippling like a shadow with a heartbeat. The moon carved her face in pale silver, sharp and cold. Too familiar to be a stranger, too strange to be a ghost. Levi's rifle stayed aimed, though his hands trembled, not from fear, but memory. When she drew close enough for the firelight to find her, Anna gasped. Lydia made the sign of the cross. Ruth just whispered, "Lord, have mercy." The woman dismounted with grace, her boots touching the earth as quiet as snowfall. Her hat was pulled low, but when she lifted her head, the world seemed to stop. It was May, Levi's dead wife, or at least the woman who wore her face. The air went cold, the wind, which had been restless all night, seemed to bow in silence. Levi's voice came rough, disbelief scratching his throat. "You can't be real. May's gone. I buried you myself." The woman's lips curved into something like a smile, though her eyes stayed hollow. "You buried someone, Levi, just not me." Anna stepped forward, shotgun raised. "Don't move another inch, lady." May turned her gaze toward her, calm, unbothered. "You must be the one he bought, the one who thinks a gun makes her strong." Anna's finger tensed on the trigger, "Strong enough to drop you where you stand." Levi stepped between them. "Easy, Anna." His eyes never left May. "If this is some kind of trick, you better speak fast." May took a slow step closer, the moonlight sliding across her face, like truth trying to find its way home. "It's no trick, Levi. Silas found me after the fever. Said you were gone. Said you left me to die." Levi's chest rose and fell, his pulse pounding like thunder in a canyon. "He lied." She nodded. "He lies the way the desert burns, steady and without remorse. But he kept me alive for a reason." The fire popped between them, throwing sparks into the night. Lydia and Ruth stood frozen, the world too unreal to breathe in. Anna's jaw clenched. "What reason?"
May looked at her, then back to Levi. "He wanted me to bring a message." Levi's hand twitched toward his revolver. "Speak it." Her voice came low, almost a whisper. "He's coming at dawn, with 10 men. He says he'll take the land, and whatever breath is left on it." Silence stretched long enough for the night itself to feel it. Levi's face hardened. "And you? What side are you on?" May's eyes softened, just for a heartbeat. "I'm on the side that remembers who you were before the world broke you." Anna's voice cracked through the quiet. "You expect us to believe you rode all this way just to warn him? You work for that devil. Admit it." May turned slowly, her stare cutting like glass. Believe what you want. By sunrise, belief won't save you. She walked past him, tying her horse to the post, moving like she still belonged there, like the years and the graves hadn't happened. The door creaked as she went inside, her shadow spilling across the wooden floor. Levi didn't follow. He just stood there, eyes fixed on the horizon where the night began to pale. Anna stepped closer, her voice a whisper edged with disbelief. "Levi, if she's telling the truth." He cut her off, his voice quiet but heavy. "Then we've got hours left to live." The ranch fell into silence again, save for the restless groan of the wind and the slow beat of a dying fire. Above them, the moon hung high, cold and watching, like a witness too old to intervene. By dawn, the land would choose who it remembered and who it buried.
The dawn came slow and mean, rolling over the hills like smoke after a gunfight. The sky blushed red, then gold, then the gray of old bones. The McCall ranch lay still beneath it, waiting. Even the wind had stopped, the world holding its breath before it remembered how to scream. Levi stood at the edge of the porch, rifle strapped to his good shoulder, hat pulled low. The sling around his arm was stiff with dried blood. Behind him, the women were awake, each quiet in their own way. Anna checked her shotgun again and again, her jaw locked. Lydia whispered prayers that trembled like candlelight. Ruth clung to her small satchel, her eyes red but steady. And May was sitting on the steps, staring east. The sunrise painted her face in fire and forgiveness, though she carried neither. She looked like a memory that had refused to die. Levi finally spoke, his voice low as the rumble of a distant storm. "They'll come from the ridge. Silas always liked high ground." Anna nodded, keeping her eyes on the horizon. "Then we make the ridge his grave." Lydia looked at her, trembling. "You can't mean to fight 10 men." Her reply came cold. "We ain't got the luxury of meaning to." Levi said nothing, but his silence carried more weight than words. He turned toward May. "You sure they're coming?" May's gaze stayed fixed on the horizon. "Silas don't bluff. When he wants to end something, he ends it. Then he'll get his chance." They waited. The sun crawled higher. The light began to burn away the night mist, and with it came the sound. Hooves, dozens, maybe more. Slow at first, then pounding, steady.
Anna moved beside him, fearless, her shotgun roaring like judgment itself. Ruth screamed and ducked as wood exploded above her head. Lydia dragged her toward the cellar hatch, shouting prayers into the smoke. May stayed where she was, calm as the grave, eyes locked on Silas. When she finally rose, her hand went to her side, and to everyone's shock, she drew a pistol. The look on Levi's face wasn't fear, it was recognition, the way a man looks when he realizes the past hasn't finished with him yet. May fired first. Her shot found Silas's shoulder, spinning him in the saddle. Chaos followed. Horses screamed. One of Silas's men fell hard into the dirt. Anna reloaded, blood streaking her cheek where a bullet had grazed her. Levi kept firing until the rifle clicked empty, then switched to his revolver. The battle was a storm, heat, dust, noise, and blood. When the last echo died, only the wind moved again.
4 of Silas's men lay still. 3 had fled. 2 groaned in the dirt. And Silas Dodd stood bleeding but alive, his pistol raised, his eyes fixed on May. You were supposed to bring him to me, not save him." May's voice was quiet, steady. "I did bring him to you, just not the way you wanted." She fired again. Silas staggered, dropped his gun, and fell to his knees. The dust swallowed him whole. Levi stood frozen, chest heaving, staring at her like a man looking at his own ghost. "May, why?" She holstered her gun, the faintest smile flickering on her lips. "Because I wanted to see what kind of man you'd become before the end." "The end?" Her legs buckled and she fell. Anna rushed forward, catching her as she hit the ground. Blood seeped through May's coat, dark, spreading fast. Levi knelt beside her, his good hand trembling as he touched her face. "Silas got you." Her eyes fluttered. He always did like to finish what he started. She coughed, the sound wet and weak. "Levi, don't let this land die with us." He shook his head, voice breaking. "May!" But her eyes were already glass. The dawn caught 'em, turned 'em gold, and then nothing. Levi bowed his head, the world going still around him. Anna placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice barely a whisper. "It's over." He looked out across the land, the blood, the smoke, the broken fences, and said, "No, not yet." Because even as the sun climbed high and the birds returned to the silence, Levi McCall knew that nothing truly ended in the West. It just buried itself and waited to be remembered.
By the time the smoke cleared, the West had gone quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of silence that follows after the land decides who it's willing to keep. Levi sat beside May's body until the wind shifted. His hat lay forgotten in the dust, his eyes somewhere far beyond the horizon. He didn't cry, not because he didn't feel it, but because out here, tears were just another kind of rain, and rain never came when you needed it most. Anna watched from the porch steps, her hands shaking around an empty rifle. Lydia stood near the barn, murmuring soft psalms over the wounded men. Ruth had gone inside, whispering to herself, a child's way of stitching sanity together when the world rips it apart. Levi finally rose. The stiffness in his legs wasn't from age, but from the weight of staying alive when too many others hadn't. He turned to Anna. "Get Ruth ready. We're burying her on the ridge." Anna hesitated. "That's where you said Silas would come from." He nodded. "It's where he fell. Seems right she rests over what she stopped." By sundown, the ground was dug, a shallow grave overlooking the valley. The view stretched wide and endless, the colors burning like whiskey and rust. The sky was bleeding out its last light as if mourning with them. Levi laid May down himself, wrapping her in a sheet of white canvas that looked almost holy under the dying sun. Anna stood beside him, holding a Bible she barely believed in. Lydia whispered the words she remembered, and the rest was wind. When it was done, Levi stayed behind. The others walked back, leaving him with the silence. He knelt by the fresh mound of earth. "You once told me the land remembers," he said quietly. "Reckon you were right, but I hope it forgets this part." He set May's revolver atop the grave, not as a token, but as a promise. Then he rose, looked west, and saw something he hadn't seen in a long time. Smoke, faint and distant. A homestead, or maybe another fire waiting to happen.
He sighed, picked up his rifle, and began walking. Each step sounded like the ticking of a clock running out of mercy. Weeks passed. The McCall ranch held steady, scarred but alive. Anna took charge, rebuilding fences and driving cattle again. Lydia taught Ruth how to read under the shade of the old elm tree. The land healed, slow and stubborn. But Levi didn't stay. He left one dawn, just before the rooster called. No note, no goodbye, just footprints leading into the fog. Anna found his hat hanging by the door, the same way a gunslinger leaves a piece of himself behind for luck he knows won't last. Some said he rode south, chasing peace or trouble. Same thing out there. Others whispered he joined the marshals, hunting the last of Silas's men across the Badlands. Nobody really knew. Only that on certain mornings, when the light hit just right and the wind moved through the hills, folks swore they saw a lone rider passing by the ridge, hat low, coat torn, the ghost of a promise still burning behind him.